currently situated on the traditional homelands and waterways of Munsee-speaking Lenape indigenous communities. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the people who have stewarded it throughout the generations. We additionally acknowledge the unrecognized generational labor of enslaved Africans in this place, as well as the labor of immigrant communities. And we offer a steadfast commitment to working to dismantle the ongoing legacies of systems that have historically erased their lives, contributions, and narratives. We offer our deepest respect to all these people and ancestors, past and present and future, and our responsibility today to continue to be good stewards of this land. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Nancy Pearson. I'm the acting chair of the Larchmont Mamaroneck Human Rights Committee. Welcome to our 39th annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Commemoration. A special welcome to our elected officials who've taken the time to join us. Our apologies to the town board for scheduling on the night of their installation. I would like to also welcome and introduce Sejas Senshala, who is the chair of our Westchester Human Rights Commission. Thank you to Amy Nathan, a member of our committee, for starting us off with the land acknowledgement appropriate for all of Westchester, and more specifically to our villages and the town of Mamaroneck. And our thanks to Taylor Hammond and Mila Cherubini for singing Lift Every Voice and Sing, commonly known as the Black National Anthem. We're here tonight to celebrate and remember the life and legacy of Dr. King. Much of his thinking, speaking, writing, and actions carry the same message of hope that we've just heard in that beautiful hymn. We're also here to celebrate, uplift, and honor a valuable community organization, C.U.R.E, the Coalition for Understanding Racism Through Education, whose mission embodies Dr. King's goals, sees much work still to be done, and is continuing to do that work. You'll get to hear about their work in just a few minutes. Each year, our committee discusses the topic for our yearly commemoration. We made our decision in early fall and began the planning. But from fall until now, many, many issues have come into the news and into our communities. It's heartbreaking to learn how many issues there are. But the topic of affordable housing remains just as challenging and as relevant as ever. We don't expect to find the solutions tonight, but we do want to continue the discussion and the education about the necessity, challenges, and possibilities. The more we know as a community, the more likely a solution may be found. As you will see and hear, tonight's program includes the work of many, but particular and special thanks goes to one of our newest members, Valeska Mancia. Valeska, would you stand up? Not only did she create a vision from our discussions, but she was able to transform it into tonight's reality. Valeska will make the final remarks, but I wanted to take this moment for a public and sincere thank you. And thank you all for coming to Hommocks and the school district for hosting us. Maria Albano, the assistant principal of Hommocks, will add a few of her own words of welcome.
Thank you, Nancy. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Mamaroneck Union Free School District Administration, it is a true honor to welcome the Larchmont Mamaroneck Human Rights Committee and our community members to this special event. This evening marks a significant milestone for us. It is the 39th year that this important commemoration has been hosted within our district schools. We are particularly proud to continue this long-standing tradition of honoring Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy here at the Hommocks with this community event. We are also so proud of Mr. White's incredible Havoc singers and their participation this evening. We know you will enjoy their performances. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Jorandi Martinez. Gerandy Martinez is the Executive Director of the Community Resource Center, a nonprofit community-based organization empowering immigrant and low-income families by providing the resources and advocacy to help them become self-reliant and thriving members of our community. Gerandy has been with the organization since 2008, when she began as an ESL volunteer teacher, and has grown with the organization over the last decade of its exponential growth from a programs coordinator to programs director, and now is its leader. In her role as the Executive Director of the Community Resource Center, Gerandy has been a valued support to our schools, providing resources to staff members, students, and families. She's a great example of our community partnership that we value so deeply as a district. Please join me in welcoming Gerandy Martinez.
Thank you. What an honor to be here. This is a very special moment. On behalf of the Larchmont Mamaroneck Human Rights Committee, it is a true honor to present this year's Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Award to the most amazing organization we are so lucky to have at the community, in the village of Mamaroneck and also Larchmont. Tonight, as we gather under the call that affordable housing is a human right, we also want to pause and recognize the work that makes justice possible long before policy is written or buildings are built. The work of education, of truth-telling, and courageous community care. We are so proud to honor C.U.R.E, Nicole Elefanti, and all the members that you see listed up here. The Coalition for Understanding Racism Through Education, for 7 years of sustained, principled leadership in helping our community understand the roots and realities of systemic racism, and for doing so with honesty and compassion and deep belief that our collective responsibility is to do better. Thank you. Come on up here, Nicole. Nicole Elefanti will be receiving the award on behalf.
Hi, I am Meg Koifer, a founding member of C.U.R.E and a board member. This award invites us to reflect on our origin story for C.U.R.E, and at its heart, that story is about connection across people, across villages, and across a town. In 2017, Nicole and I met at a holiday party. Now, if you go to holiday parties and you don't leave founding a nonprofit, you're not having enough fun. So we kind of tucked away in a corner where we realized that we shared a deep commitment to expanding honest, meaningful conversations about race and racism. We didn't want to create something that simply reflected our own interests. We wanted to build something that could hold many voices, many experiences, and many entry points into this work. We knew that it had to be both formal and informal. An organization, yes, but also just a gathering. A place for people to break bread and break open ideas, feelings, histories, and truths. We started in my living room at the time in Larchmont, inviting people to talk, not about what we wanted to launch, but about what we needed. Over hours of conversation, a few essential themes emerged: coalition building, education, and addressing racism. From those topics, first came our name for C.U.R.E, the Coalition for Understanding Racism Through Education, and our guiding mantra: talking about race and racism is uncomfortable. Let's talk. From there, we began organizing community conversations and educational programs long before we had nonprofit status. The Larchmont Mamaroneck Lions became our early fiscal sponsor, making our first programs possible. Leaders like Mary Lee Berridge and the Human Rights Committee lent their wisdom, credibility, and courage to our early efforts. Some of our first programs were right here each January, embedding deep conversations into the annual Human Rights Committee MLK Day event. We also partnered early on with the school district on their Jumpstart Transition program for rising ninth graders. But ultimately, our origin story isn't about programs and structures. It's about people meeting, listening, wrestling with history, and challenging one another with care. Because racism doesn't live in dogma or documents alone. It lives in interactions, in communities, in relationships, and in the stories we inherit and pass on. That is where our work began, and then we expanded. More from Ann Mottola.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ann Lobu, and I'm a member of C.U.R.E.
The other Ann.
The other Ann, right. Since 2017, C.U.R.E. has brought people together in more than 50 free programs in line with our mission, some of which are represented on the slide above us. Our mission is to strive to educate ourselves, which is very important. We wanted to learn ourselves, and our neighbors about the structures and implications of systemic racism in our country's institutions as a crucial part of dismantling it. Our first community event was a screening of the documentary 13th at Larchmont Avenue Church, with a talkback with prison scholar Baz Dreisinger. We also hosted intimate conversations in private homes on topics such as redlining and school segregation and integration that featured community voices and expert facilitators. And we had fun doing it. After the murder of George Floyd, we met the moment with a virtual journey through 400 years of racial inequality in America. As the unequal impact of the pandemic became clearer nationally, we chose to shine a spotlight on our own communities through a virtual series of panel discussions. Drawing on local experts, inequity in our community addressed topics such as employment, immigration, digital equity and child well-being, and housing. Through the generosity of the County Board of Legislatures, the leadership of Catherine Parker, and the participation of county libraries and nonprofits, C.U.R.E. launched a county-wide program about race and racism we called 5 Towns, 1 Book. Over 3 years, we read a book together and unpacked it with the author and in smaller groups. In 2021, we read Cast by Isabel Wilkerson. We read The Sum of Us by Heather McGhee in 2022. For 2023, we read a biography of Lorraine Hansberry, Radical Vision, by Soyaka Diggs Colbert. We touched thousands of people with these events in person and virtually. Another strand of programming focused on caregivers and children. We hosted an interactive workshop on talking about race with children, a subject that can be challenging and uncomfortable, especially for white people, and the Anti-Racist Book Club for Young Families at the Larchmont Library. Thank you.
Thank you, Meg and Ann. That was a bit of our past. First, Pam Brandman couldn't be here tonight, and she's my C.U.R.E. right hand. She serves this community with such humility, so quietly every single day, and I miss her tonight. And I also want to acknowledge Ann Mottola, who's our graphic designer and made us look good all these years. I don't think that it's a coincidence that C.U.R.E. is being honored this year with the focus on affordable housing. It was Richard Rothstein's book, The Color of Law, that taught me about the great lengths our federal government went to in order to create generational wealth, housing wealth for white American families after World War II, purposely excluding Black Americans. One of the ways this was codified was through redlining, and the repercussions of that legislation exist today and are rippling out to affect not only Americans of color now, but all of us. By 2023, C.U.R.E. turned its attention to advocating for affordable housing locally with the Mamaroneck Coalition for Affordable Housing, MICA. MICA was born during COVID, and then its work deepened after the devastation of Hurricane Ida, when some families were displaced from our community, never to return because there is simply not enough affordable housing stock. I will refrain from the painful details regarding what I witnessed over an affordable housing proposal in the village of Mamaroneck. I would prefer to honor C.U.R.E.'s long-standing partners and local leaders some of whom have become my family. They advocated tirelessly and suffered detrimental personal blows in the name of their desire to see a glimpse, a small symbol of something beautiful that we could have all built together. They advocate every day because their organization's visions are here to empower the communities they dedicate their lives to. An affordable space to live is the foundation of mental, physical, and spiritual health, and they know this firsthand. They are Gerandi Martinez, Janet Rolon Fry, Teresa Collier, Andreen Smith, Manny Rawlings, and Leilani Yizer Reed. Reverend Tammy Burks and Reverend Peter Bynum held us during that time. The MICA members remained resilient. The Okra kids knew more than we did and taught us so much. And dozens of neighbors, many of whom are here tonight, I see you all, came out and supported us. All of this was from the trusted and beloved relationships that came through years and years of C.U.R.E's collaboration. Affordable housing might be the most misunderstood issue we have facing us, and we don't just see this locally, we've seen this across the country for generations. The old narrative deprives our society of becoming healthier. I don't know how to answer tonight's question. How do we make affordable housing happen here? I can only pose more questions. Is affordable housing a human right? Can Westchester come up with a holistic plan to build together? Does our community feel immune from doing our part? Does every type of child deserve to live anywhere with safety and dignity? Now we're going to go to C.U.R.E's future with Gabby Blumberg.
So as the world around us changes, C.U.R.E knows that we have to change too without losing sight of our mission. Meeting this moment means reflecting honestly about what's needed now and being willing to reimagine how we show up for our community. So we're evolving our theory of change so we can move forward with intention and impact. But this can't be done in isolation. It has to be shaped with this community, and we want to hear from you. So please look out for future opportunities to engage with us because we're really open and grateful and ready to listen. And I want to acknowledge another board member, our beloved Helen Horsham-Bertels, who couldn't be here tonight. We met Helen through the Town of Mamaroneck Equity Task Force. She's a consultant and a trainer whose work includes diversity, equity, and inclusion. Helen recognizes that inclusion and belonging are basic human needs and supports her clients in building inclusive communities anchored by trust and well-being. Helen will keep C.U.R.E connected to its principles as we go forward. Back to Nicole.
So we're also looking into the future with Stacey DeCristofaro, who was here from the very beginning, and while she was getting her social work degree, I saw her many times to touch on the idea of generational trauma in social justice movements, and we discussed what it might look like to bring some somatic healing to our community. So that's also on our agenda. And the Human Solidarity Project is also something we began last March, and it continues every month with community leaders. Only 3 years before I was born, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was seen by many as the most dangerous man in America because he called to shake the power that profits from us being segregated and living in a scarcity mindset. To believe our racial issues are solved is dangerous and naive. One only needs to listen to the loudest, most powerful voices in America right now. The C.U.R.E team is always choosing hope. I heard someone say recently that hope is a space between what is and what could be, and we believe that we can flourish in that space together. For Gathering for Joy, I just want to call out that next Wednesday night at the MLN, there will be a beautiful concert with Summer Fling, which is a young band that came out of Mamaroneck, and they'll be raising money for the STEM Alliance's summer enrichment programs. So please try to come and join us there. And then on the 23rd and the 24th is the Mamaroneck Chorus led by Steph Chin, multi-generational, multicultural, and that is also at the Emmeline, and it's just a way for us to come together and pause and laugh and dance and sing together. So I hope you can join me. I want to thank everyone tonight. I want to thank our elected officials for being here, for the Human Rights Committee for putting this together, and Happy New Year.
All right, thank you, everybody. We're here to, I think, provide really a primer on what's been happening in our community, and I couldn't ask for a better group to do it than the group that we've been able to assemble this evening of extremely busy people. My name is Betsy Bradley, and it's my privilege to moderate this conversation among some of the most accomplished leaders in the fields of government, planning, and housing that we have in our region. But before I begin, I want to make it clear, and this speaks to something that Nicole just mentioned. Our discussion this evening is going to center on the need for, the desire for, and the challenges to affordable housing. We're not going to be focusing on the equally important subject of fair housing or the prevention of discrimination to anyone who's seeking to buy or rent a home or acquire a mortgage or get housing assistance. That's a subject for another Human Rights Committee event, which probably will be happening in another year or two, but just to be mindful in the distinction between affordable housing and fair housing. Having said this, I'm really happy to welcome our panelists. They are beginning with legislator Shanae Williams from District 16. Legislator Williams chairs the Housing and Planning Committee for the county and is a vocal advocate for housing both in Yonkers, her district, as well as throughout Westchester. We have, to my left, Jen Jacobs-Guzman, who is a Village of Mamaroneck resident, an urban planner who is on the board of Washingtonville Housing Alliance, among her many roles, and we'll hear more about that this evening. Andrew Regenstrike, who is a Town of Mamaroneck, is that right? Town of Mamaroneck resident, and focuses on on economic development opportunities and oversees affordable housing developments throughout New York City and the Hudson Valley. And finally, but certainly not least, Tyler Croce, who is a Columbia University student who was called out as one of the Okra kids, but I think he is so much more than that. Tyler was a member of the Okra Affordable Housing Project when he was a student at Mamaroneck High School, not very long ago at all. And he also worked extensively on the 5 in 25 report for Welcome Home Westchester, and I'm hoping he'll speak to that for us too. So thanks to all of you. We, as Nicole mentioned, as others mentioned, we call this program, as the subtitle of this program, we said affordable housing is a human right, and how can we make it happen here? And that isn't just, I think, the Human Rights Committee being a little hyperbolic. It's, in fact, in Article 25 of the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights. That declaration recognized adequate housing as a fundamental component of the right to a decent standard of living. For this event's purposes, we are deeming affordable housing to be representing adequate housing. And I think it's a question to pose to any of my panelists who feel comfortable answering it. Why is housing a human right? Who wants to start?
I'll start. I'll be the opener of this question.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone.
There we go.
Good evening, everyone. As you heard, my name is Shanae Williams, and I am a county legislator for District 16, which represents part of the city of Yonkers. And it's great to see so many people here tonight. Certainly, our Senator, Shelley Mayer. Thank you for being here. Look, that's a great question. So, I think affordable housing for me, I say this all the time, that it's a human right, not because you know, simply because in order for you to do anything at all, you need to be housed. I think it was mentioned earlier in the opening that it's all interconnected. You cannot think about working, you cannot think about you know, taking care of your mental health or doing anything if you're not able to sleep somewhere safe, if you don't have a roof over your head. So I think, you know, if we want productive people in our society, if you want, you know, to make our economy thrive, we need to make sure that people have the very basic needs, which is, and housing is that number one thing. I think for me, housing is probably the number one issue facing residents all over, not just New York State, but our nation. And we have to take it seriously and invest in housing for everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for that opener. I appreciate it. Anyone else? Looks like Andrew, are you prepared to step in once we figure out our technology?
Hello?
Yes.
So, you know, thank you. You know, this reminds me of a funny story, which was not so funny at the time. When I was in high school, I remember distinctly a disagreement I had with my parents, which resulted in me in spending one glorious night outside of the home. And I'll never forget, of course I had a place to go back to, but I'll never forget the vulnerability of that night. I couldn't think of the future, you know, the homework, my plans, my ambitions. I was cold, hungry, and sad. So the basic tenets of what it means to be a human, for me was a fleeting moment, but you know, left an impression. If you can't feel secure, if you're not warm, if you don't have a place to call home, then nothing else matters. It's simply a matter of survival. And the threshold should be way higher than that as human beings. And you need to take account that there's a collective we here. So if there's one person who doesn't have the security, that has a residual effect to the community, you know, the town, the state. So people need to feel secure. I do believe it's a basic human right. Not just for the individual though, again, for the collective we. So I think it's a good place to start in the togetherness.
Thank you so much. Anybody else? I think that this idea of interconnectedness and community really comes from what the both of you have said, really seeing the ways in which without housing, very little is possible or very little can be taken for granted. Legislator Williams, I was hoping you would kind of begin us on the macro level, because that, I know for many of us, as was mentioned, we're more familiar, and I imagine this crowd more than most, with the local battles that have been happening around housing in our community, with the local issues that have emerged, particularly in recent years. We may be less familiar with what's happening across Westchester and at the county level. And since we are grateful to you, you were kind enough to come and spend some time. I hope you'll start us off at that slightly higher altitude.
Sure, thank you. So it's been an eye-opener for me as a legislator, because I was a local elected. I was on the city council in Yonkers for about 6 years before becoming a county legislator. And when in Yonkers, I was kind of in a bubble. But once I stepped out and started doing this work at the county level, I'm realizing that we're not very different when it comes to fighting for affordable housing. It's not all that different from different towns and villages across the county. And I say that because I'm getting calls and emails from everyone across the county about the fact that they simply cannot afford to live in Westchester anymore. I think we have an affordability crisis, not just with housing, with other issues as well, but today we're gonna stick to the topic, which is affordable housing. We have an affordability crisis because there's not enough housing stock. There's not enough people willing to welcome. When you hear the word affordable, it has a naturally negative connotation to it. And so people in Westchester, because it's known to be a wealthy community and more suburban in certain places, it's almost frowned upon when you say we're going to build an affordable housing in this neighborhood, right? And so that's what I've been seeing across the county, is that there's a lot of NIMBYism when it comes to affordable housing. There's a lot of people struggling, and it's our job at the county level to make sure that people are housed. We have shelters, family shelters, single shelters for men and women individually, all over the county, but I want to say we are at or near full capacity for all of our shelters. And it's our job to try to transition people from our shelters into permanent housing. And we can't do that if we don't have the stock available. And so we invest heavily into developing affordable housing. We just can't do it fast enough. We need about, I want to say, 12,000 more affordable units in this county for us to not have this constant crisis, where people can actually go and pay, 30% or less of their income and not more. But what we're seeing, people are spending way more than they're bringing in. Everything is going up. The cost of living, as you know, our utility bills are going up. People simply cannot afford it. And housing is as we started to say, is the most important issue if we want a successful society, if we want to make sure that our county is thriving. We have to think about how we can help one another, our whole community, and look at it as a holistic issue that we can address simultaneously. And we need every bit of the Westchester to participate. Right now, we're seeing the majority of the affordable housing development happening in the cities mostly, Yonkers, New Rochelle, White Plains, Mount Vernon, and even Peekskill. But we need to find ways, and there are solutions, there are ways to make it happen. But we can't do that at the county level by our own. The state can't do it on their own. We need the local municipalities, the villages, the towns, the mayors to get on board and change their zoning laws. I might be jumping ahead and
Not at all.
I don't know all the questions.
No, not.
But, I'm gonna stop there and just say that there are solutions that we can implement, and I think it starts with educating the public about the need and getting them on board, getting the buy-in so that we can effectively create the laws and do the development that's necessary to help folks who need housing.
Thank you. I think I'm trying to think about where to begin with what you said, because there's so much there, and it really, I think, encapsulates for us both the promise and the opportunity that we have in front of us in Westchester, and then also these tremendous challenges. Tyler, you look like you're about to just jump out of your seat. And I wonder if this is a time for you to maybe talk about 5 and 25, or about your work with Welcome Home Westchester, or whatever you think is right, because I can tell.
Well,
Yeah.
sorry, I'm just 18, so I'm just moving around. But I don't know. I will say it's not all doom and gloom. There is movement. The town has done some stuff recently, approved a couple housing projects, under one in the pipeline. But I definitely think when you think about the housing crisis, it's important to remember it affects all of us, even if you're not personally affected by it. So where we have people love to brag about how high their property taxes are, they're some of the highest in the nation. Part of the reason why it's so expensive is to hire municipal workers, to hire teachers or firefighters for the same quality as a state like Texas or Florida. We have to pay them way more because there's no other way for them to afford to live here. And so it makes everything more expensive. It means you have to pay more in stores because the labor is more expensive. It means that your businesses and commercial areas have less foot traffic, a lot more are empty. This is especially a problem in Larchmont. So it really affects every aspect of the community, even if you think that kind of you're insulated from the problem, or even if you can afford your own home, and thankfully you're not in this situation, but it really affects all of us.
Can I ask, when we're thinking about affordability and thinking about what we're seeing on the Westchester level, if we were to have that, you said 1,200 units of housing, 12,000, I was going to say, it sounded like a small number, 12,000 units of new housing. Affordability is not, it's the buzzword. I mean, I feel like it should be the new word, OED word of the year. It seems like 12,000 will take us how many years into the future? Affordability is not going away as a problem. Is that something that, does Westchester do the forecasting as an intermediary between the state and our locals, and I absolutely hear what you were saying about the burden is on the local officials to change their zoning, to really help their communities rethink their approach and their relationship with affordable housing. Where can Westchester at a county level, what can they do?
So what we do at the county, what we currently do, and I'm happy to support the work that we've been doing, is our biggest KIP contribution, I would say, is providing funding to develop more affordable units, right? We've spent over the last 2 years that I've been on the county, I want to say about 2024, we spent about 30 million in new development for housing across the county, and in 2025, another $16 million. But that's just a small piece in my eyes. I think what has to happen in addition to building more affordable units, we have to think about the density, right? Because construction costs are so high, developers complain all the time about, not wanting to pay a prevailing wage because it's already so costly to buy the materials that they need and things like that. We have to, when we do these projects and we build, we have to, I think, build as high as we can in order to get more out of it and provide more. Another thing that we've been doing is kind of preventative. We have an entire office at the county, the Office of Housing Council, that works with different partners to make sure that we keep people in their homes. If people are housed, with the lack of housing stock that we have, we want to keep them where they are so that we're not struggling in, maxing out our shelters and then trying to figure out where we're going to place people, right? So it's all kind of, all of these things have to work together in order for it to be successful. But again, we're not going to be able to build 12,000 units by tomorrow. Just yesterday, I was at an opening of a luxury building, new luxury building in my district, 27 stories, wonderful, great, but no one in the surrounding area in downtown Yonkers can afford to rent that space, right? We're attracting a lot of people from outside of Westchester, which is great. You want people to come from, wherever, from New York City, Brooklyn, whatever, but it's driving up the competition, I would say, and it's making it more difficult. And then what happens is it's a trickle-down effect, right? We see gentrification happening right before our eyes, but it's not intentional, but it's still happening. And how do we stop that? I don't have the answers. I just think that we need to be more mindful about when we build a luxury building in any community, we have to also simultaneously build a low-income or affordable building at the same time, or in that same project, do a mixed use kind of mixed income building, because we can't separate. We'll be going back in time, right? I would think, Dr. King would be too happy when you see, the segregation, because that's what's happening, especially in Yonkers, but it's happening across the county when you look at where all of the affordable housing development is happening.
I'm going to throw to Jen and then Andrew.
Thank you. What you just mentioned about density, I think is like an important point, but also you mentioned education. And the Mamaroneck community had the opportunity to kind of learn firsthand, what happened when we proposed, I would say, pretty low to moderate density affordable housing. And I think going through that experience in this pretty low density community was like it was a good learning experience. It was brutal, as Nicole said before, but it was a good learning experience. And I do think education has to be part of what we're thinking about when we're talking about affordable housing. I think, what we heard when we went through this process of trying to build something for the village of Mamaroneck, which hasn't had the same success as the town in terms of new affordable units. It's been decades, frankly, since anything has been purpose-built in the village of Mamaroneck. And maybe we've had a unit or two here or there that are set-asides in, essentially market rate and luxury buildings, but we have not had any new affordable stock added to the Village of Mamaroneck portfolio, sort of housing portfolio. So I think what we learned a little bit in that process is, people are really worried about density in these small communities, and I think our attention to kind of having contextual solutions that don't scare people. We're not about to build a high rise in the Village of Mamaroneck. It's not that, it's not a community that's built for high rise, but we should be trying to counter some of this luxury, we see these luxury market units coming online, and we do need options for regular working class people, middle class people, low income people, really can be in the community. They can keep their kids in the schools here. They can have their children, attend all the programming in schools here. And we couldn't do it, for 62 units. And I think before we come back and try again, we've got a lot of education to do. We have a lot of work to do in the community to make sure that people understand what we're talking about. We are not talking about anything institutional. We're talking about privately run, just units that are affordable to a range of household incomes. So anyway, just wanted to emphasize the education piece.
Thank you. Andrew.
So I want to talk a little bit about process. Developers are interesting people by and large. They're at the same time visionaries, but they're also very practical. If you talk to most successful developers, they'll tell you their priorities to go where they're wanted. So how do they determine they're wanted? Usually a town reflects out some way. And then going further back, where does that kind of persona come from? It really should come from a place of reflection and engagement and processes. So I think to really manifest some of the things we're talking about, we have to kind of go to square one. Anytime you do something really difficult and different, it's going to be really hard. It's going to take a lot of time. And there's going to be a lot of different opinions as you go through the process, which is okay. We all know people in our lives that are vastly different from us. And that's what makes the world so beautiful. But with housing, it's right there in your face. So you can't really sneak it through. I think there's not as much focus as there should be on the process that gets you to yes. Because oftentimes what that yes means is completely undetermined. Very often, if the framework is set up in an appropriate way, the final product is the easy part. So people will tell you what they're thinking, what they want, their view of the world, their view of what housing needs. For me, it may be a decent sized single family home. For someone else, it's being part of an apartment community. For someone else, it's sitting on an acre of land in a 10,000 square foot house. So, and that's okay. I think that stress and tension is meant to exist, and through a proper engagement process, and there's lots of models for how that really looks. Everyone could be winners, and then the people who come in and start building will be more in sync with the populations they aim to be a part of. So, just want to emphasize the process component of this. I truly believe, and I've seen it, almost any town could get to yes, as long as the proper engagement happens.
I wonder if, thank you, Andrew. I wonder if this would be a good time, Tyler, to talk a little bit about the process that you got to be part of bear witness to, because there certainly was, I think, so much work done to build understanding and consensus. And we know, as judges, that it was not successful. I think its legacy is, on balance, very beneficial. So many of us learned so much, and our eyes were opened. And there are more that are just here who feel that way. But I wonder if you could just speak about that from your perspective as part of the Oprah team.
Yeah, I think number one, this has already been said, but a dialogue is really important. That almost everyone shares the same goals, that making the community more affordable, making it so that people who work in the community and can actually afford to live here is something that everyone wants. And so we can't grant anything down anyone's throat. Have to go carefully and make sure that people understand what it's about. I think there are a lot of misconceptions around affordable housing. One of them is that it has to be high. It doesn't have to look like tall buildings. It doesn't mean turning places into a city. There are lots of good low to mid-density, middle housing that are kind of like accessory dwelling units, where you might put homes in people's attics, or townhouses. Sleepy Hollow has an abandoned car plant that they took and they completely redid it, and they're putting hundreds of units of housing in, and none of them are tall buildings. Sleepy Hollow, I mean, it's a sleepy village. But it's low-packed townhomes that are like 2 or 3 stories, but there are tons of people who are able to afford to live there that wouldn't have been able to otherwise, both in the set-aside units that are all affordable, either through tax credits funded by the government, or all 3 municipalities have inclusionary zoning. This is something that we also did a lot of work on in Okra, which sets aside a certain percent of units in a building, is 10% for all 3, as guaranteed affordable housing, which means all housing development eventually leads to some affordable housing. And then it's also worth considering missing middle, not just in terms of size, but also income. So there was kind of an issue with the town of Mamaroneck's owned apartments, the Hommocks Park, right near here, where there were some people whose income grew too high for them, and unfortunately they had to be kicked out. And the problem was we don't have enough housing stock between the guaranteed affordable housing subsidized units at like 80% or 60% of AMI and the actual market rate. There's too much of a gap there. And so in those instances, mixed income buildings can really play a valuable role in bringing down the rent and making it more affordable for everyone. So it doesn't just have to be all affordable buildings. I also think mixed income buildings are a great way to achieve kind of the vision of really integration and breaking down the barriers that Martin Luther King had, where people who are all different income levels are working and living in proximity. The units have to be the exact same quality by law, so everyone's living in the exact same apartments. And those are all really great ways that you can bring the community together and both bring tremendous economic benefits and also kind of those less tangible benefits about diversity and inclusion and being a community where everyone can live, where my grandparents are able to move into an apartment here, where if there weren't apartment buildings, even if it's not an income thing, they probably don't want to take care of a house, a single-family home. So also making sure that there are those options available. And I ultimately think it all adds up together to make communities a better place. And that's really what affordable housing is about. It's about enhancing communities. It's not an attack on communities. It's not trying to impose something on communities that they don't want. It's something that really enhances the quality of life of everyone who lives there. And I think that that's something that you really have to remember when you're discussing this issue.
Who would like to follow Tyler? Yes, please, Andrew.
Just to dig into 2 points you mentioned. So just like I think most developers want to go to communities where they're wanted, they also tend to follow economic incentives. So, and the truth is, government and the private sector should be partners. So I think one area of exploration is really to align incentive schemes with middle income housing. Because I agree, that's a huge gap. That's probably where 90% of people reside. And right now the economic incentives are not necessarily aligned with that. And the second part, the greatest potential that someone from a lower income community has to advance is by surrounding with people who create opportunities that don't presently exist. So, I happen to be a huge fan of mixed income housing. I don't think we should, warehouse the four, just as I don't think that there should be, uber exclusivity existing all the time everywhere. I think that mix where the magic happens, you should be able to get an internship in a law firm or a bank if that's the direction where you go in, no matter what community you live in, because your neighbor, happens to work for that bank or that law firm. So 2 really important points. I think aligning the incentive scheme to facilitate more middle-income housing, I think is a great goal. And desegregation, you know, and its purest form is allowing people from all walks of life to live in the same communities and have the same opportunities.
Thank you. May I just push back a little bit? I just want to push back just a little bit on something that I thought. Right. So when you say that government isn't necessarily incentivizing developers enough when it comes to middle income housing, I don't agree with that, only because in Westchester County, no affordable housing development gets done without that private sector. There's always that partnership. So we have something in the county called New Homes Land Acquisition Funds, and basically if you're a developer and you can't afford, or you would like to spend your funding on different parts of your project, you'll come to the county and say, hey, can you purchase this land for us and sell it back to us for $1, and we can build affordable housing on this property. We do that. We've spent millions of dollars. We'll purchase land for $10 million, sell it back to the developer for $1, and then they can build from the ground up affordable units, and they have to use the county's area median income. The AMI can be set at the higher end, whether it's 60%, 80%, or 125% of the AMI, and that is typically where you find a lot of people in my neck of the woods in the south side of the county saying that is not affordable because they're expecting low income housing or housing that is at the 30% area median income or lower. Right? Whereas because Westchester is so diverse, because we have people with a range of income in this county, it drives up the area median income. And so when we talk about the missing middle, I see the missing middle as people who are making that 80% area median income, right? People who are making $90,000, for example, or $80,000, whereas people who are at the low income level are making $30,000, like my mother was making $40,000, right? She can't afford to get the affordable housing that we often promote throughout the county. So, and there's always senior housing too, which I love when we do senior projects because we have so many senior citizens, some who are homeowners, empty nesters, they want to downsize, they can't, and you just spoke to that a little bit. Completely agree with you. If your grandparents want to downsize and rent for whatever reason, it's not affordable for them to do so because, again, they're on fixed incomes and X, Y, Z. There's a number of different reasons, but the fact that they won't move out of their homes and people like me, millennials, can't afford to buy anything because there's not enough housing on, for me to purchase because folks aren't moving out. It's just this whole cycle that's never ending, and it puts us all in a terrible position. But to get back on track, I will say that there are opportunities for development with partnerships with the county for developers who want to build 100% affordable housing. There are incentives from the state as well. I think where I see a lot of the issue is, it goes back to zoning. It goes back to the local municipality, and it goes back to communities not understanding the term affordable housing. And for that purpose, I'm going to just define what I consider affordable housing, the term affordable housing to me. And that is housing that you can afford based on your income, where you're not spending more than 30% of your gross income on housing. That is affordable. If you're spending 50% of what you're bringing in, that's not affordable. You're going to struggle, and that's why we see so many people standing on food lines to get food every week, all over the county, in districts, in communities that I didn't expect to see, right? So we have to really get down to the nitty-gritty of talking about affordability and what that truly means in this day and age in Westchester.
Thank you. I'd like to jump out. I guess two things important about affordability. I was just looking at what the village of Mamaroneck looks like, and it might be a place where we don't expect to see affordability being such a big issue for people. In 2022, almost half of village renters were cost burdened, so paying more than 30% of their household income for housing costs, so for rent at least. And we also had 39% of homeowners being cost burdened, so their mortgage costs and their housing costs were more than 30%. That's 39% of Mamaroneck village homeowners. So even if we think about Mamaroneck community as being a place where this isn't as big an issue, it's really clear that, you know, we might not be seeing it all over, but people are really struggling. We do need more options, you know? And I guess just one other point I wanted to make, thinking about kind of incentives, and you know, my regular work is on the public side, financing affordable housing from the public side. And we have developers lining up with years and years of pipeline. They want to work with the public sector to finance these projects. We can do it here. There's the county, there's the state willing to partner with us. So I think we really can make this happen. We have great partnerships that, you know, we have skilled development teams. We have nonprofits like the Washingtonville Housing Alliance and West Hab, who,
and the Westchester.
yeah, and many partners for Welcome Home Westchester. So there's many ways we can do this. I do agree that it comes back to zoning, and it comes back to like really holding our electeds to an action plan. So, you know, we, I think, need to hold them to kind of moving on some of these goals. There's been a lot of study and a lot of talk about the need, but I think we need to move beyond studying. When we have 47% of our community cost burdened for housing, we need to say, like, what's the next step? How do we dedicate some public sites to making this happen? Whether it's a small building or a medium-sized building, or hopefully something really dense, which is what I'd like.
But beautiful, dense and beautiful, yes.
Yes, and I guess the last point I would say is, when you finance affordable housing with public money, the public sector holds you to a very high standard in terms of the things we're including in the building. So we, at least from the public side, when we give public money to affordable housing, we're saying, you better make this beautiful. This is going to be high design, all sustainable. It's going to be green building practices, LEED certified, passive house. These are going to be some of the standards that you have to meet if you're going to use public financing. So the idea people might have, affordable housing is not attractive or not well designed, that was something to leave in the past. You may not know it, but you may be in New York City entering affordable housing all the time. New York Fashion Week is held in an all affordable supportive housing building, you know, in Midtown. You know, there's plenty of examples of recently built affordable housing that will blow your mind with how beautiful the design is and all that's included. So we can do it here.
And I'm mindful of that, and Celeste is probably telling you I am more than out of time. I see all of our Havoc singers here getting ready, and we also do have a short film to share with you that really, I think, focuses in on, and this is all Valeska's doing, focuses in on our key partners, particularly in Mamaroneck Village, and lets us hear from some of the people who, in addition to Tyler and Jen, were on the front lines in the conversation over the past several years. But I don't know if anybody grabbed an index card on their way in and for a question. I see Leilani has got her hand up. I can probably take a couple questions from the audience, and I'm going to start with you, Leilani, so if you can speak loudly, and I will keep the questions to the audience.
I will speak very loudly. Thank you to everyone, and just thank you to C.U.R.E. for always being amazing in the community and willing to have these conversations. And Human Rights Committee. While the panel, you guys were amazing, and I took a lot of notes. I think one of the things that was missing in this whole piece, and maybe it's not what's supposed to be said, was what actually happened in the village of Mamaroneck. And it was not with lack of education. It was not lack of willingness on the municipality. It was a few people that stopped the housing. And if those few people was able to galvanize enough support to then make other people believe what affordable housing actually, what it is, how they defined it. They didn't sit there and use the true definition. They followed a group of people, and people as a community willingly decided not to show up and show up for true affordable housing. They decided to believe, what is it? There was also a racism component to that whole movement. So it wasn't on the lack of rezoning for the, and I'm talking about the Village of Mamaroneck, and I will speak on that because I was on the board. It wasn't lack of zoning. It wasn't lack of the majority of the board. It wasn't lack of some people who were on the Affordable Housing Selection Committee that the board put forth. The village decided just recently to roll back some of those laws that we put through. So I would say it's the lack of your community members for not showing up for what is true and what is right, and we're trying to make it happen. Because you had a board who was willing to do what is right for all people, but the people did not show up. So I would put that on every person that is able to, any able body that can show up for not just for your type, but show up for yourself with anything in your community, because it wasn't because of our lack. I would say on the county, how y'all could have showed up better for us for getting damn near murdered on the board is that you show up in support. The county didn't show up in support. I will also say one of the issues that some people who are truly advocating for in the Village of Mamaroneck, which is flooding, having better infrastructure policies that are across the county, and especially when we're building. How are we supposed to be building all these things and our infrastructure sucks? Flooding is going to continue to happen. That is a huge problem in our community. It's knowing what are the actual issues, trying to fix it from the root up. And we cannot build tall buildings in Mamaroneck. It's just not going to happen because of the demographics of our people and what they really kind of want. They come here for a small town feel. So that's all I'm saying. And maybe it wasn't a question, it was a statement. But it really is about people showing up. And now we have a board who sits and does nothing. Vote better.
I think, Leilani, there's so much there, and what I want to focus on with this group and in the moments we have left is education, because I think what you were pointing out is that it was too easy for a group who were motivated by hatred to sway the many, and I think that is something that we face in this country every day. And so the group that I have here is trying to do the right thing, I think, through official channels, but also by bringing courageously bringing their ideas to a forum like this one, where they are hearing from all of us, from all of their constituents and their community members and their neighbors, exactly how we feel about these issues. So I think we need more of this, and we need more people speaking truth to power as we do. Are there does anyone want to address any component of that, or in the second we have left before Valeska merged me? Yes, Andrew.
So, I'd like to believe there's some universal truths, and there are. I think one of my biggest lessons through all my life experiences, for better or worse, is that people's version of truth is not always the same. And it can be something as basic as affordability. Like, I really appreciate that exchange. We have different opinions. That's okay. And I think forums like this, and the more people talk and engage, is where we hopefully sussed out a more perfect truth. What you can't avoid ever, and I wish this wasn't true, is people have different life experiences. They have different perceptions of things. Some definitely veers towards the extreme. That's not okay. But to a large extent, having different opinions and different perspectives and different manifestations of what should be in housing, I think is natural. And then I think one of many points you made that was really good was it just comes out to showing up and having that conversation and persuading and all that stuff. But I do think it starts with a fundamental true is that people look at things differently. And that's really where the hard work and dialogue comes in, but people look at things differently.
Thank you. And it is hard work, and I'm so grateful to this group for coming and putting in the hard work with us. This is an unpaid opportunity, and this panel came just because they're passionate about the issue and as they wanted to speak to all of you. And I now need to turn it over because we have a wonderful short film that focuses on the story of Mamaroneck and those who were working to make a difference. So I'm going to usher us off the stage so you're not staring at us. Thank you again.
When I think about affordable housing here in the Mamaroneck community, I am thinking of an incredibly broad audience. I have to admit, I'm even thinking of my own children. Today, young people are coming out of college with enormous amounts of debt. Some people say, you know, I started with nothing and I figured it out. Today's young people are starting with negative $100,000 in their account, and they're struggling to stay on top of independence and being able to use the money that they have to live and provide for themselves and their hopes and dreams of a family.
I don't think affordable housing has a specific person in mind. It could be someone that looks like me. I'm the face of affordable housing. It could be someone that looks like your grandmother. It could be someone that looks like a student that just graduated from college. It could be your next door neighbor who's lived in your house for decades and wants to downsize, but they can't because they can't afford to buy something new in the community and stay next to family. So
I see the faces of parents, children, immigrant children, people of color. I see, you know, also, I mean, different type of faces when it comes to housing.
Children, literally. That's sort of the real face of the housing crisis for me is children.
So affordable housing has a formal definition. It's really that you are spending 30% or less of your income on your housing costs. But I think from a personal level, what it means is that you have the ability to comfortably afford where you live and you have money left over to take care of your kids, to pay for healthcare, to pay for food and everything else that is meaningful to you. You have connections in the community and you're not stressed and worried about whether or not you're going to be evicted, you're going to lose your home. You just have a baseline comfort. What we learned as part of the Affordable Housing Task Force is that there are hundreds of people here, over I believe 1,300 of them, who are struggling to afford their rent on a monthly basis, who are struggling to afford their mortgages on a monthly basis. Everyone knows that in 2026 and also back in 2025, there's an affordability crisis.
I think the housing insecurity, that instability, it comes out in anxiety. It comes out in anxiety and it comes out in fear, and it really impacts people's quality of life. Like, you know, I try to sort of keep in mind my own sort of position of, first of all, I'm a woman of a certain age, my child is grown. But just looking at younger people in my own family and the children of the families that we serve, moms are stressed. You know, they want for their kids what every mom wants for their kids, you know, safety and security. And it starts with housing. Like, that's literally the most basic sort of right and need that people have.
Affordable housing creates a sense of safety and also creates a sense of stability, not just for parents, but also for children, for the entire family. I think not having a place to go back home, to go back to, it's scary.
If you're struggling to stay in your community because you might lose your home that you've had for years, you're not really going to feel rooted. You're going to feel stressed. A lot of that is going to manifest itself in maybe mental health struggles, physical health struggles as well, because affordability is actually tied to a lot of those markers. If your blood pressure is up because you're worried about getting evicted, that might have a physical manifestation on your health, and you're not going to feel rooted and connected or feel like you can be comfortable and thrive.
I think right now a lot of people are scared about the future and are feeling unconnected. When you do not have secure housing, when you are employed, you have income, you are participating in society, but you don't feel certain about your housing and you constantly need to move in order to maintain an affordable situation for your family, connection is broken. And
I feel like people think about affordable housing and they think about them and not us. And I'd like people to recognize that affordable housing is all of us. I mean, there's someone that's making 6 figures and they live here, but they're at risk of losing their home because costs keep going up. And that's something that we can all do. We can do small things or we can do big things, but we can find something that we can do together as a community and identify what's reasonable and what's meaningful to move things forward.
You talk about wanting to feel connected and rooted, and you really need to provide opportunities for people to stay here, to be in a good frame of mind, to have a good quality of life, and to be able to stay here and have their families also be connected and rooted here. You have to provide the opportunity.
There's so much to learn in the area of housing. From the past, we can learn different approaches as to how housing was created, how housing actually was a response to a crisis. But we don't have to wait for a crisis to start thinking about housing affordability.
I feel hope when I see people come together to learn about the challenges that we're facing. We can disagree. We can have opinions about the best path forward or the best solution for a situation like that, or even disagree about the root causes. But if we can connect, if we can talk, when we sit in the same rooms and with excitement and verve express what we know, I think when we build that connection, then we can also connect on solutions.
I think this community has that value that, you know, they care for each other because they know that if someone is suffering in our community, everybody is suffering, you know, with them. So I think that what gives me hope is that, you know, who we are as, you know, people, but also as community members, as people that we are all, you know, in one community and that we all want to really thrive.
I think youth. I think there's opportunities, and there's been opportunities, and we've been sort of really working with the younger people in the community. And, you know, oftentimes they say like the young will lead us. And I think we're really in a time where young people are really hearing and understanding the nature of this crisis. And it's interesting to them, like it affects them. Like they have grown up in certain areas and they also want to be able to stay rooted and stay connected.
I find hope in the students who were passionate and really connected and engaged in the moment while we were doing this work. And even after we stopped as part of the task force, that work has continued because they're passionate about it. I found hope in the community members that showed up and made themselves vulnerable to share what their needs are on an ongoing basis. You know, the woman who was in her 70s who shared that she was afraid that she was going to lose her home and ultimately did and had to move out of Mamaroneck. People shared really personal stories, and I found hope that they made themselves vulnerable so that the community members can see this is what affordable housing looks like. I find hope in that. And I have seen other people that show up at the Board of Trustees meetings and they are advocating for affordable housing. There's a small coalition that's sort of mighty and powerful that is working to educate the community about what it means. But at the formal level, in the board, I'm struggling to see where they're gonna go. What does it mean for us to be a pro-housing community? And what is meaningful and reasonable for the community to accept and to develop here? So I think we all need to step up and to advocate and to talk to them and to ask questions to see what's next.
Good evening. For all of y'all that, my name is Valeska Manzilla. Before we end the night with Havoc Choir, led by Leon White and accompanied by Jordan Piper, I wanted to extend a huge thank you to our panelists, Jennifer Jacobs-Guzman, Legislator Shanae Williams, Andrew Regenstreich, and Tyler Prose. Our moderator, Betsy Bradley, thank you. The Mamaroneck School District, AV staff and custodial staff, thank you. The remaining Okra students who also worked on this project but couldn't be with us, Alex Gross, Hannah Miller, and Anna Blanco, Peter Finelli and Bubba Finelli for lighting and production, Village Pizza and Pasta, Marcelo Barros, Sandy Lee, LMC Media, our amazing community leaders who took the time to participate in our video, Andreen Smith, May Coffer, Janet Roland Fry, Teresa Collier, as well as the entire Human Rights Committee for their collaboration to put together tonight's event. Finally, I want to thank you, the audience, for coming tonight to celebrate C.U.R.E. and to take the time to learn about an important issue in our community. I am so grateful to have met and spoken to so many community leaders and members here in Larchmont and Mamaroneck. My hope is that tonight we have been able to continue to shine a light on one of the challenges our community faces and inspired some small action on how we can connect to create solution. Or at the very least, it has allowed our minds to open and to bring out the active listener within ourselves. And I'd like to end the night with the words of Dr. King. Everyone can be great because anybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and verb agree to serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love. One more shout out to join Summer Fling and to support the STEM Alliance. And now the beautiful voices of Havoc.
Good evening. Good evening. We are thrilled to be here to commemorate Dr. King and all that he stood for. We will be singing two pieces. I see familiar faces. Hi, guys. Former choir students. Let there be peace on earth, the universal cry for peace wherever we call home, and the song ringing Zulu, Sia Hamba. It's fun, but it has a powerful message. We are marching in the light of love, so please enjoy. Thank you.